All right, let's talk about one of the best undercover fights in boxing. Caleb Plant, the IBF 168-pound champion, and David Benavidez, the 168-pound WBC champion. Their camps are exchanging words, and David Benavidez is talking about at least his team is talking about trying to break the ribs of Caleb Plant. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. These are the type of videos that I really have fun doing because these are up-and-coming champions that I'm going to talk about. Now, you would think in most sports that once you're a champion, you're not up-and-coming anymore. But I think that this is it's reasonable to say that both Caleb Plant and David Benavidez are up-and-coming champions in that they are just now beginning to get the recognition from the wider boxing community for their abilities and their potential to be great fighters. Now, Caleb Plant is an American fighter from the state of Tennessee that holds the IBF 168-pound title. Or super middleweight title. I always say the weights because, sometimes people will say like junior welterweight or super lightweight. So is junior welterweight and super lightweight the same? Boxing is really wild. You got like four different belts for every weight class, and then you've got two different names for most of the things that sit in between. But I think 168 super middleweight is the only name there, because otherwise it'd be junior light heavyweight. Anyway, man, I'm sorry I couldn't help but do it. But we got these two up and coming stars. David Benavidez is a monster. He won his belt, I think, by beating Anthony Durrell, but he won it for the second time because he had tested positive for a powdery substance that people use at parties to make themselves feel good. And as a result of testing positive for that, he was stripped of his belt. He had to go through the rigmarole, had to get another shot at the title that he won, and he managed to win that back in a very good fight against an unusually competitive fight, or unexpectedly competitive fight, from my perspective. An unexpectedly competitive fight with Anthony Durrell. While Caleb Plant got his IBF title in an unexpectedly dominant performance where I didn't expect it. That when I say unexpectedly, I'm talking about myself, where I didn't expect him to be that dominant over Jose Escadigi, because Escadigi, who is I do believe he's from Argentine fighter who fights out of Mexico, but a terrifically aggressive fighter who won his belt by beating the tar out of Andre Durrell, who was a long-time top 168 pounder. But I just didn't expect Caleb Plant to do Jose Escadigi like that. And I thought that David Benavidez was going to have a more dominant performance against Anthony Durrell. But these two guys now are set. Both PBC fighters, and both really do not like each other, as is evidenced by what David Benavidez's father said in this interview that took place on Fight Hype. Because now that we're in this quarantine, dude, there's a lot of people, pretty much just interviews talking about fights going on. Fight Hype has been having a lot of them and really good interviews, man. So, after you listen to this video, make sure you go to Fight Hype and listen to the actual interview between David Jose Benavidez Sr., I believe, and Fight Hype. But what they said was that, David Benavidez really does not like, and their team really does not like Caleb Plant, and they don't like Caleb Plant for several reasons. The most important of which is that he kept mentioning that David Benavidez lost his belt because he was using, because he was sniffing white powder, and his father, Jose Benavidez Sr., I do believe his name is Jose Benavidez Sr., but David Benavidez's father said, he walked up to Caleb Plant and said, look, man, I understand everything is going on. We're opposite camps. We want to get the fight on and all that. But would you mind leaving that particular portion out of your criticisms? You know, because I'm the guy's father. It's very hurtful to the family. If you could just keep it boxing and not get on that, I would greatly appreciate it. Now, according to Mr. Benavidez, Caleb Plant said, yes, okay, cool. I'll stop doing that. I won't do that anymore. And then, according to Mr. Benavidez, the next day, Caleb Plant is back out there calling him a C-head and other things, right? So that family is very upset with Caleb Plant, and they want to make that fight. And that fight, they say, is going to be very personal. He said that as far as talking about the fight itself, they say that, that David Benavidez is not somebody that's going to be playing around. He's not playing around with you. He's there to give the fans exactly what it is the fans want to see, which is knockout. So they anticipate David Benavidez walking Caleb Plant down and going to his body, making him fight inside and knocking him out, breaking his ribs and making him pay for all of that talking that he's doing. And I love it, man, because that's the attitude that you need. That's the type of spirit between two fighters that make an excellent fight. And if these guys are actually going to make the fight, that's even better, because I would consider that fight to be not on the level of a Roy Jones Jr. versus Bernard Hopkins, the first fight. I wouldn't say it's that level of talent, because neither one of these guys have shown me anything to say, yeah, these are Bernard Hopkins and Roy Jones Jr. level talents. However, I think that their talent levels are very high and similar to Jones and Hopkins, that they're close. And if you remember something about the Roy Jones Jr. Bernard Hopkins fight that makes it, the first one that makes it exceptional, is that it happened so early in their career, right? Because both Roy Jones Jr. and Hopkins were rising stars in boxing. I know that I think Bernard Hopkins might have gotten a loss a little earlier on in his career. I'd have to go back and look at his record, but because he didn't necessarily have the huge amateur background. He came out of prison, learned to fight in prison, and then similar to kind of like a Terrence Crawford, fought his way up to get recognized. And eventually, because of his skill set was so exceptional, he went to the top of the sport, which was not the case with like a Roy Jones Jr., who was, an Olympic silver medalist and who got ripped off in the Olympics and everybody knew. But regardless, they were two top-notch 160 pounders. And so now you have Caleb Plant and David Benavidez, who are champions, right? But not widely known champions. And they're both very young, both in the early stages of their career. And to have these guys match up on their way up, instead of having them match up on their way down, I think would be a great fight. One of the best fights that can be made in boxing, in my opinion. Now, the way that I used to see it, man, there used to be a cat that came by the channel. I haven't seen him in a long time. If you still watch the videos, Ty Legacy, you're my guy. But me and one of my subscribers, Ty Legacy, we used to go, behind the scenes, have conversations about David Benavidez and Caleb Plant. And this is at least 3 years ago. And the conversation we had at that point in time kind of went like, David Benavidez, because I was big on David Benavidez. And I was like, yeah, I don't know, man. Caleb Plant's going to have to learn to fight a little better on the inside, get a little more, get a little more James Toney in his game, because he can fight on the outside, but when things slow down and they get in close quarters, it didn't seem like he really could deliver a lot of punishment while he was infighting. Now, if he fights a David Benavidez like that, that was my reasoning at the time, he's going to lose to David Benavidez. However, since that time, it appeared, to the way that I see it, I see David Benavidez as having pretty much looks like the same fighter he did. He looks like the same fighter he did 3 years ago to me, in the fight that's why I thought it was surprising to me that Anthony Durrell fought David Benavidez as well as he did, because a couple years ago, I was like, oh man, this dude is going to run through everybody in 168, including Caleb Plant. But now Caleb Plant, though, having seen him fight Jose Escudegi, he had a kind of a soft touch than that last guy he fought, so I ain't really worried. I'm not really worried about that. He got a knockout, but the competition level was really low for the last guy that I saw Caleb Plant fight. But against Jose Escudegi, dude showed the ability to infight, and he showed a lot more power than I thought he had. So I am definitely looking forward to this fight, and I think that it has progressed to the point where it's a 50-50 fight, and a 50-50 fight that should definitely be made. Jose Benavidez, or David Benavidez's father, was talking about how Caleb Plant was jealous of David Benavidez because David Benavidez was making more money, he had more fans, he was more that. I don't get the sense of that. And now I don't know how much these guys are getting paid, or how much they're making, how much they're getting paid. I have no clue for Caleb Plant and David Benavidez, other than to know that neither one of these guys are getting Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford money. So both of these dudes can up their game in that regard. I'm positive, as well as popularity and name recognition, because outside of hardcore boxing fans, nobody knows it. Not many people know either one of these guys. They're not none of these guys are household names. So all of that stuff that he was talking about with one guy being jealous versus the other guy being jealous, yeah, I kind of take that stuff with a grain of salt. But this fight definitely needs to happen. And I think, Jose Benavidez very well might be able to beat Caleb Plant like that, but I don't think it's going to be an easy fight for him. I think that Caleb Plant is a significantly better fighter than Anthony Dirrell is at this stage of Anthony Dirrell's career. So, we'll see. But anyway, I love the talking back and forth. I love this fight. Certainly hope it gets made. You let me know what you think in the comment section about who will win. And with that, I'm out. Peace.